It's time now for MediaWatch on France 24. Emma James joins me now. Hi there, Emma.
Hi there.
You've been looking at all the pomp and circumstance that was very much in evidence on the Champs-Élysées for the Bastille Day celebrations. What did the US President Donald Trump make of all that, do you think?
Yes. Well, it is something that's very unusual for people from the United States. But it does seem that Donald Trump, who was here in his role as the US head of state, obviously, but in particular because it's the 100th anniversary of when America first got involved in the First World War. So he was really the guest of honour. And things do seem to have gone quite well. Lots of images like this online with Emmanuel Macron and Donald Trump looking really quite pleased with themselves, thumbs aloft. They seem to have gone on better than people had anticipated after, of course, a fairly rocky start. It does appear as though US-Franco relations are back on track. At least that is what the press seem to be reading into the kind of images that we're seeing. The Associated Press says the white-knuckle handshake has given way to a Trump and Macron bromance. Whether that's a slight exaggeration, I'm not quite sure. This White House reporter says that Macron is angling to be the indispensable intermediary between Europe and Donald Trump. Well, the New York Times, not known for its favourable coverage of Donald Trump, of course, says that the pair have cemented an unlikely friendship. Now, this article goes on to talk about how people have been impressed by the seductive qualities of both First Ladies. According to this writer, Donald Trump and Melania were beguiled by Brigitte, while Melania apparently drew gasps from the crowd as she got out of the car arriving for that parade today on Bastille Day. Interestingly, there was time for one last handshake between the two men. Their handshakes have become the stuff of legend. Before they bid adieu, there was one handshake that went on for around 30 seconds. People very surprised by the way that this went on. The Huffington Post calling it Donald Trump's longest, most awkward handshake yet. I'm not
And
quite
he's not
sure.
letting go. He's still not letting go, is he?
No, absolutely. He's clinging on, and now he's clinging on to Brigitte as well. There was one moment, though, where the two men didn't seem to be in sync, or should I say in tune with one another. It would appear that the US president isn't a fan of Daft Punk, because, of course, there was a military band playing a medley of Daft Punk songs. Lots of people commenting on Twitter that the US president didn't really seem to be enjoying himself too much. This person says, I think the French president on Bastille Day playing Daft Punk to the president was a message, go ahead, Daft Punk, make my day. Well, this Twitter user says, do you think this visit was actually just so that Macron could troll Trump and subliminally call him a Daft Punk? Seems a little harsh. But if we take a look at the images from today, you can see that the two men have very, very different reactions. We do have some images to show you. There we go. This is that moment in question where they're playing Daft Punk. It's a military band, of course, not the kind of thing they normally play. Emmanuel Macron looks like he's really enjoying himself. But, of course, a 39-year-old man, far more likely to be a fan of French electropop than 71-year-old Donald Trump. It has to be said. But lots of people got into the spirit of things, clapping along. Even some of the men in uniform were clapping along in the crowds. But French viewers in particular noticed someone who looked even less impressed than Donald Trump, Jean-Yves Le Drian. There he is, now the foreign minister. He used to be the Minister for Defence. And that face really did amaze some people on Twitter. Lots of comments, like this woman saying that Le Drian doesn't know where he is. He's in the mode where he's thinking, this would never have happened if I was still in defence. Another Twitter user saying that Le Drian is perplexed, perhaps not quite ready for Daft Punk. And this gentleman saying, military music no longer what it used to be, army marching band medleys of Daft Punk. Macron looks ecstatic, Trump bemused, Le Drian aghast.
Goodness me. Well, you've really found all the gossip there. Now, of course, Donald Trump raises eyebrows everywhere he goes, and not too many, in fact, on this trip. But there was one comment in particular to the First Lady of France that has got people chattering a little bit, hasn't it?
Yes, it has indeed. It was broadcast on Facebook Live because Emmanuel Macron used Facebook Live to actually broadcast the whole of the first meetings with the US presidential couple. Take a look at this rather awkward exchange. So there you go, Donald Trump telling Brigitte Macron that she's in good shape and that she looks beautiful. Now, people here in France don't seem to want to have his head put on a spike for this, although it does seem to be something of a backhanded compliment to the 64-year-old Brigitte Macron. Le Parisien says that it's difficult to know exactly what Donald Trump was thinking and wanted to express. Even if it wasn't a sexist remark or a reference to Brigitte Macron's age, the formulation appears at least clumsy. And that's something that I think can be said of quite a few comments that have been made by Donald Trump when he's working as a diplomat rather than in his usual role. And that's something that Janet Street Porter talks about in The Independent. He gets a far rougher ride in the British press for these comments. Her piece in The Independent says Donald Trump's patronising comment about Brigitte Macron shows he sees women as no more than accessories. Wives are reduced to set dressing, nothing more. She goes on to say that it's as if he's discussing a Miss World contestant or a prize heifer. And so a lot of people object, but in the US, the Boston Herald has this article written by Jacqueline Cashman, who is a woman, I hasten to add. She says, "Calm down, everyone. Donald Trump just told France's First Lady, Brigitte Macron, she is fit." And she goes on to say, since when did it become offensive for a man to tell a woman she is attractive? According to Twitter, she says, and a number of news outlets, he can't acknowledge a woman's physical appearance without being sexist, ageist, and a jerk. Well, there are plenty of people out there who agree with that sentiment exactly. She didn't mean it to be agreed with. She was being quite sarcastic. But some of the best comments, I think, have come from women who are very much in the public eye. Alex Berg, a TV presenter, says people will shrug and say Trump was just offering her a compliment. It's creepy and over the line to comment on a person's body. And final word on this coming from the US comedian Chelsea Handler, who says Trump told Macron's wife, "You're in such good shape." To be fair, Trump didn't know women lived to be 64 years old. Very harsh, but perhaps there is an element of truth in there. He just didn't expect a woman of that age to look as good as Brigitte Macron does.
Okay, so maybe a case of brutal honesty. But of all the things he could have said and all the things that could have happened, I suppose the officials must be quite pleased with how everything went here in Paris. Thank you very much indeed for that. Emma James with today's edition of Media Watch.